Hello, everyone. I am Justin Redrick. I go by the Bitcoin Vegan on Twitter, and I am the author of From Bars to Bitcoin. Here today we have Miss Lynn Albright, the mother of the legendary Ross Albright. And we also have brother Russell Schultz III, son of USL political prisoner and Black Panther, Russell Schultz Jr. Everyone, please come off the mic and introduce yourselves. Tell us, a little bit about you and why you do what you do. We can go with Brother Russell first, if that's cool.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Brother Justin. My name is Russell Schultz III, and I'm the son of U.S. political prisoner Russell Haroon Schultz. And my father is a political prisoner since the 70s. He's been incarcerated for those years, and he is also a former Black Panther, former Black Liberation Army general. He's escaped from prison quite a few times, and he's a freedom fighter for people in general of all walks of life historically. And he is embracing his Islamic space now and doing a lot of work spiritually also. So thank you very much for the platform. Thank you very much for you guys being here. And thank you very much, Sinclair and everyone from I Love Black People.
Yes, sir. And we have to save one of the best for last. Miss Albright, how you doing? Share us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, such an honor to be here. And I'm always grateful to Sinclair and the conference and everything. I mean, 2 years ago, y'all gave Ross the John Brown Award, which was such an honor. And so I'm so glad to, join forces with all of you. For those who don't know, my son, Ross Ulbricht, is serving a double life plus 40-year sentence for all nonviolent charges, first-time offender, for essentially his role in a website called Silk Road that was based on the non-aggression principle, which meant that voluntary interaction and was not intended to harm people, but it did allow people to exchange things freely and anonymously, and it wasn't controlled. It was open source. People did what they did, except there were limitations that were somewhat policed. Anything that harmed a third party, for instance, child porn was not permitted because it hurts a child, or stolen property not permitted because it hurts the owner of the property. Violent things, that sort of thing was not permitted, but drugs were permitted, considered a free choice between the two people. And for that, the judge gave Ross death in prison sentence, essentially, which sounds like is what Russell's father has been given as well. I don't know his sentence, but it's been a long time. Anyway, the thing about Ross, and it is so connected to you guys, is that he's called has been called the second most important person in Bitcoin history, because the website he created only took Bitcoin as the means of exchange. So it was proven you had to open a Tor account, you had to open a Bitcoin account and fund it and everything. So it wasn't easy, but it brought Bitcoin, put it on the map essentially, because people were using it as money. It proved that it could be used as money. And I personally think that's why they gave him such a harsh sentence. I think that's it. And so, yeah, so ever since, this is 8 years now, it's, I just can't give up on my son, just like Russell's not giving up either. And, we've just been fighting for him. And I'd just like to put in a plug for our website, freeross.org, and there's a petition to sign. And, we're just asking for clemency, asking the president for clemency, at least some relief. It doesn't have to be perfect. You walk out the door, but this sentence is wrong. And so many sentences are wrong. So many people are essentially have death in prison sentences for things that should not be like that. So.
A part of my history as well, as I've shared on a lot of the platforms here in the Bitcoin space, around the world as much as possible. I myself was personally incarcerated in prison for 3 years, and I can tell by the looks on your faces, your two faces, that you're actually fighting for your family. And I never actually got to see what my mom's face looked like when I was locked up. And I was incarcerated from 21 to 24. And just to make it a long story short, there was not many options to come home to except to Bitcoin. And that's where I made my way into. And I've done time with a lot of people who've had those type of sentences, those 30 years, those 4 years. I know a guy who had 5 life sentences and got 4 of them vacated. So I never actually, I never believe it's over for anyone. And that's one of the things I wanted to share because before I even get into the discussion, I never believe it's over for anyone. You know, I've seen people pull off miraculous things. You know, it's all about the correct, somebody waking up on the correct side of the bed. You know, so we're here to help as best as we can and also provide some type of knowledge and understanding on what a political prisoner really is, you know, and just how they're actually treated differently because, Brother Russell, I'm not sure, but I don't know if it, because I actually got kind of mixed up with someone else I had just read about, but tell me, you know, in your idea, what makes a prisoner a political prisoner? Because you know, that's a different distinction. They're even treated differently inside of prison. So you know, what would you qualify as political prisoner, and why your individual respective family member falls under that category?
Well, thank you for, first of all, asking that question because it's a very pertinent question. And for folks to have a real understanding of it, I think you have to delve deeply into American politics in general. You have to delve deeply into the politics of racism. You have to delve deeply into the politics of slavery and things of that sort, because those things are actually the base for which these categories are built on. So people like my father come under a category of political prisoner due to specific acts and ideologies and ideas that they've held against the state. And so the 60s was the turbulent 60s in the context of people like the Black Panthers and the Black Liberation Army and a gang of other non-secular or people who didn't have as much name recognition as the Black Panthers actually taking arms up against the state. So that's one category of people who actually have made a commitment and have verbally or otherwise said that what the state is doing is wrong and we're going to fight against it. So then you have people like the animal rights movement people, the eco-social justice movement people, and now even our brother now, and his mom here speaking for him, we have people who are taking stances against what the state has leveraged on them in reference to technology. And so this is very, very important that we understand that the politics of technology and the politics of how it is actually deemed a crime and who's targeted for it specifically, because for this matter, for what the brother is charged for, we could probably charge Facebook, we could charge almost Twitter, almost all of the social media that you could, Instagram, all of the social media that you could think of for these same style or type of charges in different ways. You could also charge Disney, porn sites, you know, just across the board for things that are happening in the tech world that charges could be leveled against them, but it seems quite unfair that this individual has been singled out. More importantly than just singled out, one of the things that we see with the animal He hasn't advocated armed struggle like my father. He hasn't advocated for police to be targeted or anything of that sort. That things were normal in the 60s. Those were normal things in the 60s. And with the advent of the COVID era, and also with the George Floyd era and that police brutality that's directly tied back to why people would say take up arms against the police. This is an apple and an orange, but he has worse charges than some of these people who've advocated some of these things that he hasn't advocated, but he has a double life sentence.
It's like, it's like he created a website and got charges like he actually committed murder or something. I mean,
right.
Double life plus 40. You know, like,
double life plus 40 is what we call death by incarceration.
That's right. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I'd like to add to what Russell said, because I agree. I think that it has to do with threatening the state. And I think that Bitcoin was a threat. But also the judge even said, she cited quotes from the site, not proven that they were by Ross, but from the site, talking about attacking the state, saying the state was, I forget the exact wording, but, brutal or wrong. I can't remember exactly, but it was attacking the state verbally. And somebody wrote it on the site. And she said, this philosophy, we know you started the site for philosophical reasons, not to be a kingpin, not to be a drug dealer, philosophical reasons. And this is a dangerous and troubling philosophy. And we don't know that you've left it behind. So essentially she's saying, I have to have you die in a cage because you have this scary philosophy that threatens the state. And it became real clear to me because every other Silk Road defendant has gotten 10 years or less, including the biggest drug seller who actually sold drugs on the site. He's out. He got 10 and got out early for COVID. So, and here's Ross with a death, as you say, death in prison. And this is not right. It's not American. It's not something that was done previously to the drug war. That I know of. When I was growing up, you don't get sentences like that. You have a chance. You have a chance to, redeem yourself in, whatever. Life is a long, long time. People change. And this is wrong. It needs to change in the system. Absolutely. And also you mentioned children and how they're seeing, you probably have too many times, Russell. They come in, they're so excited to see their dad say, and then when they leave, they're crushed, crying, shattered. Families are shattered and falling apart. It ends up being a real attack on the family. And these kids often grow up and go right back into the into prison. They end up not having them. But of course, that's very profitable for a lot of people. And that's the other part of this. It's like they're making money. People are making money off of people being in cages, which to me is human trafficking. If you're making money off of human beings. And this is wrong. It's morally reprehensible. So, but I do think there's a political push about it. And people being made an example. They said Ross is going to be their example. I don't know what they said about your dad, but I imagine he's an example.
Yeah, it is those quote unquote words of being made an example of are kind of very harsh when you're not the person living through the example. And one thing I do remember about when I was in prison was the fact that someone shared, I think it's in North Carolina, the state makes about $36,000 off of per inmate. So I'm not sure what state you all, your loved ones are locked up in. However, you still start noticing that it is a big money game. I remember working for $1 a day in prison, sometimes 40 cents a day. And what happens, the worst part is a mindset cultivates around that. And so with me sharing that, it also sounded like everyone is being chastised for either wanting freedom or creating some type of freedom. And it starts to look a little bit not even a little bit, it starts getting worse and worse as time goes on. Number one, because no one is coming home from prison. And number two, like how Russell mentioned, if we really are honest, Ross just made a website, and Russell's, Panthers back then were fighting for freedom. The same thing that, America was built off of, they don't want the citizens to do. And, when you have that type of freedom there, with what, like he said, with what Ross created, it was what we know is just a website. And like I mentioned, you have Craigslist, you have people that sell all these crazy stuff. And we know we can actually say, well, why is it that? Well, it dealt with Bitcoin, or with Russell's father, it dealt with to rise up. So that all sounds like a bit to me of a bit of a terrorist mentality when it comes down to it. And I would love to get, your thoughts around it. Like, does it seem as if the state just says, hey, we want you to be free, but not that free, or we want you to be, industrious or creative, but not to the point that it destroys us, and quote unquote that example. So I'm asking, how does that come across to you? Because to me, it sounds kind of like, hey, it comes across as terrorist, it comes across as plain old, we can have control and you can't. But I want to hear everyone else's opinion about that. You can go first, Ms. Lynn, if you want.
Okay. Well, I think that it's definitely based on force, and it's something that has evolved to be worse and worse and worse in our country. And a lot of it's been propelled by the drug war, but so that I feel like our values, our American values, have been hijacked, really. Those values of freedom and fairness and mercy, and they've been hijacked. And there's a lot of reasons, I think. Jobs program, it employs people. It's become like its own industry and self-propelling. And I don't know. I guess you could say, it's based on force for sure. And I think there's so many, the sentences are so shocking, and there's so much unfairness and destruction that's going on that, it's a terrible thing. Life sentences have quintupled. The prison population has grown 800% since the 80s. If the prison population were its own state, it's bigger than 11 states. It's like its own state of incarceration, bigger than some of the smaller states. I mean, good grief, we're like 5% of the world's population. We have 25% of the world's prisoners. This is wrong. This is like a humanitarian crisis. It's a disgrace. It really is. And there's nothing about, they call it correctional. I'm not seeing that. I am not, it's criminal training grounds, what it is. And, it's just, it's grown into this kind of mass incarceration monster. And I just, it's got to change. It's just wrong. And I think a lot of people don't think about it because it's easy to forget prisoners. And
Outside of mind.
Russell's dad and my son, we're working, but a lot of people don't have the ability, or they can't do it, or they don't do it. And they're just buried alive, essentially, until they die in there. But meanwhile, there's all these industries cropped up about it, and the private, around the tax money, but the public prisons too. There's lots of little industries. Whole towns rely on prisons.
Yes,
I mean,
yeah. Really.
Yeah.
Really. I'm sure that all three of us, even though here's the crazy part, I've never visited someone in prison. However, you've gone to visit people in prison, and you've gone
for years,
to a town that is dedicated to the prison. Like I was in this one prison called Caledonia Institute in Tillery, North Carolina. If you look up Tillery, they might have a population of 2,000 people. Probably about 30% of those folks work at the prison, and they were, they've been like almost nepotism into the prison system to go work there. So
I lived in one. Yeah, I lived there to visit Ross in Colorado. Absolutely. And if they ended the drug war and some of these other horrible sentences, everybody be unemployed. I mean, it's a whole thing. And it's so wrong. And so, yeah. And when you say terrorism, it's kind of like, it's really torture. It's torturing people. And Ross actually went around to different prisoners and said, okay, if you had a choice between being actually tortured, like, some medieval horrible torture, pull out your fingernails type thing, or staying here, but only for a short time, or staying here for this sentence, which would you pick? And they're all like, pull out my fingernails now. It's so much, I mean, let me just take it now. It's kind of like flogging, get it over with. You might, it's like, it's not right, but at least it's not you.
I agree 110%. I would just like to add quickly that your son, Ross, is in a very unique category, specifically in the context of freedom fighting, specifically in the context of a tech warrior, in the context of just having a different ideology. But this ideology also comes from Silicon Valley. It comes from people who are tech savvy, who are into computers, who love creating things, who are part of this new world that we all live in, that we all enjoy, all of this tech, all of, new gadgets and phones and things that come along with it. But just like Eric Snowden, I don't know if people are familiar with him.
We know Snowden.
Edward Snowden.
Citizen 4, he worked for the state, but he recognized also that we were being spied on through this technology. We were being listened to. Our privacy was being invaded. We were being led down a path specifically that the state wanted, that a lot of people who work in Silicon Valley or work at home in their basement or are just, tech people are forced into a situation where they either have to, for their job or because they're fearing for their lives, or they fear what will happen, embrace the state's party line of, I won't say anything, or I'll go along with things that are unprincipled and not fair to Americans in general. And this has created a whole kind of underground type of movement of people who they work every day for the state or for Silicon Valley or for some large tech person or for themselves, but they have to hide how they actually feel about what the state has imposed upon them. And I think that your son falls into that category, and we have to fight for these people. We have to fight for the Snowdens of the world. We have to fight for the Russes of the world. We have to fight for the people who are standing up or have been caught in the crossfire in this whole
and I just like to add, we also need to fight for those who are, regular people who maybe aren't educated, maybe don't know about all these things. They are like the perfect victims of this whole thing in terms of how are they, or poor or all of that. They're caught. I mean, your dad and my son are not really unique. There's thousands of people who are being destroyed, and their families are being destroyed with no hope. And this is not right. This is not right in our country. America is supposed to stand for freedom and also for mercy and for, come on. This doesn't look good for, or isn't good for our country. And it hurts whole communities. It's terrible.
It definitely does. And one of the things I wanted to share was the fact that one of the missions that I have, like from bars to Bitcoin, this room I have, or even with the book, I share with someone because Ms. Lynn said it, even the poor people or folks who are not financially literate to be there. Like I know Russell understands where, this whole thing came from slavery, like as far as like this harsh way of getting punishment. And within that, especially within the Black community, I share with someone the real detriment to not having any type of financial literacy is the fact that most Black people I know, most people, even Russell, they go to prison over something with money, right? And in our community, we have a lot of young guys who go to jail over like selling drugs or doing something that drives them insane, because when you don't have the money to be able take care of yourself, you literally go insane and you do things outside of what is supposed to be done to make it. And I say that because once that happens, you are really trying to commit a crime for some money that'll be worth extremely less when you come home from prison. I noticed one guy I teach Bitcoin to, he got locked up in '89, and the value of the dollar was like 90 some cents or maybe a whole dollar. By the time he came home in 2019, it was worth 85 cents. So you go to prison to try to get money that has no value or even less value than when you come home. And those are one of the things that I try to drive home the most, especially, when I look to try to teach people or even share information that I have with my book, like about the journey that I went through. There's a different type of journey now. And luckily, Ross is in a category where he already had knowledge of Bitcoin before coming home, before going to prison, which is kind of the reverse of mine.
Mhm.
So now one of the things that I feel that could really drive home is how you use that for wealth. How do you use that to build yourself up? Because like Mr. Schultz Jr., what does he come home to, outside of love and family? But once you really start breaking it down, Ms. Lynn hit it. It deals with a lot of people being poor. And when you don't have that money there, you go insane. Now, granted, again, like we said, Russell or Edward, they were already in tech and noticed something and made a choice to help or to provide free markets. However, they were still punished severely for, let's be honest, there shouldn't, if it was such a terrible crime, there shouldn't be a way for it to be created, and I really feel that because it is rough, and I always think, what will someone have to come home to? And not necessarily as far as money. I did 3 years in prison and I came home to an entire new world.
Yeah.
Yahoo was cool, but Google took over in 2014.
Ross hasn't been on a computer in 8 years. I'm sure Russell's dad doesn't have any clue. He's been in there so long. And, honestly, Ross knew a guy in prison who said he didn't want to leave because he had nowhere to go. He had nothing to do. How was he going to eat? How is he going to, it creates a whole population of people that are so dependent on the prison. It's so sad. And at least, our people have family, but a lot of families turn their back, and these people are just, like I said, buried alive. And this isn't right. It's wrong. And other countries don't do it. We need to change it.
So what do you think, what would you all say is because I know all three of us individually have our starting points.
Yeah.
And we it's almost like this big goal or this big thing that everybody picks their place to start. Like you have Russell has the Panthers. I come with this approach to Bitcoin because what I like to create is something as a pathway for people to come to. Like,
That's great.
If you go to the left, what's to the left? I've come home from prison. I've gone to the programs. Some were cool, but they weren't going to change your life for real. They will keep you conditioned to be in this one little box. And I have I'm not trying to disrespect CDL drivers, barbers or anything like that, but I've seen how you're put into a category. All right, so you did time, you didn't die there, so let's work until you die now.
Yeah.
That's the mentality that's put out here. And in my opinion, you have to create a new way. And like I said, for me, Bitcoin was the entire new way. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to make it solely about Bitcoin. However, it has to be brought up because when guys come home, I'm gonna share this with you because I wholeheartedly believe your family members will come home.
Oh, thank you. We can't lose hope. You cannot lose hope.
It's not over till it's over. When people come home from prison, their mind is still at a point of being told no, not being able to, not being able to take care of themselves, not being able to participate. They're expecting a no. Bitcoin was at for me where there was no one to tell me no as far as just about building myself. So, within that regard, like, what would be your, like, I know we have a few minutes, what would be your, like, your call to action or your last stand as to, how to really bring people who are untimely sentenced or given the, as you like to call it, you're sentenced to death by prison. What will be your first, what will be your CTA to that now that we can all, push out that message and band together on and really start to make a movement behind this?
One of the biggest calls to action for me is to let people know that, so my dad's from the 60s. And of course, we just come through the George Floyd times, and police brutality is as bad or worse than it was in the 60s. And these people were fighting against police brutality. And we come up to this guy with a boot on his neck for all of us to actually globally recognize what has been happening since the 60s, right? That people already died for. Yes, George Floyd is that catalyst that globally helps all of us to see, which we see in the hoods and the streets all of the time, but it globally with the technology of the phone to shoot it around the globe in a millisecond. So that technology intersection, I think, is a call to action, just like these quote unquote hashtag movements that I'm not always the biggest fan of, but at the end of the day, I recognize that it allows for people to be able to be educated and politically educated in seconds. And so my call to action is for you to become politically educated, no matter what it takes, for you to understand what is actually happening, not just in your community, but in communities globally, to actually have some care, to care about something outside of yourself for once, to look at someone else's situation for once and to raise your voice individually, to care about Ross, to care about my dad, to care about some of these animal rights activists, to care about some of these eco-social activists who are saying, these storms are crazy. They've been saying it for years. So if you don't look up and recognize that the storm is someday going to get you, don't wait until they show up at your door. Don't wait until the cops put their knee on your neck. Don't wait until your house is flooded. Let's collectively come together as human beings and address the human issues. That's my call to action for you, to come out of your closet, to come from under the rock. Don't be afraid. Use your voice. Learn what solidarity is. And I have solidarity with Ross because I understand where he is. I see, it doesn't take a lot for me to understand. Everyone knew the Silk Road. The Silk Road was hugely popular. And not just for guns and drugs. It wasn't just hugely popular for guns and drugs. It was hugely popular because it was the beginning of open source as people really understood it. Okay, but I need you to understand that open source, that was the forerunner to you being able to navigate now on your little navigational tool, be it Waze or Google Maps, for you to get easily from point A to point B, and somebody else to help you say, oh yeah, just right over there, it's right here, Yeah. And you may take that for granted, but that is directly connected to the work that Ross has done.
Well, I totally agree. People need to care, and it's very many people just don't care. Their lives are too easy, and it's too easy to forget what's going on. I can say that Ross has said, when I get out, I am going to fight for criminal justice reform and my fellow men and women who are in this situation, because this is wrong. And his case actually sets a precedent for terrible sentencing. I mean, they can go, oh, well, we gave the Silk Road guy double life. We can give you double life because it's, and sets this precedent, terrible precedent. And so I think I totally agree that people who care about injustice and who care about what's going on here and how wrong it is do need to support each other, do need to come together and take up causes that, and be loud. And yeah, I guess, Russell and I are doing that, and we have personal investment, but at the same time, yes, it actually affects you personally if these things are going on, because we're all in peril when people are treated the way our loved ones have been treated, and that it puts us all in danger. It really does. It's like, it's so wrong. And so it's not just about them and people you don't know. It's really about going forward, what kind of society are we going to have? And this is a very tipping point in history right now. It's a very important, and we can either go towards more government control and suppression, or we can go towards innovation and all the amazing things that could be created here. And we've got to decide, and also mercy and caring about human beings.
Yes, ma'am.
Going towards that, and not like,
Just
the opposite. Yeah. So anyway, this is a tipping point in history. We have a crossroads right here now. And I totally agree. We have to, get together and work together and help each other, and and make influence here. I think it's happening. I think it's somewhat happening, but it's not. I don't think that what's going on in criminal justice is forefront. It's a lot of noise going on out there, but just keep it going. And we can't give up, because we love our people. So even if I wanted to, I can't. And I'm sure that's true for Russell. Obviously, he's been doing it forever. So anyway, yep, I'm on board with that.
My call to action is, first of all, the fact that I actually stand in solidarity with you and your loved ones. I don't know what colors they're wearing, but I'm pretty sure they're wearing some devastating uniforms and sitting on metal all day. And it's not ideal. And on top of that, we have to, I personally believe, other people really don't care. And the reason being is because they're not actively affected. So what I would say is you have to start digging for the folks there, not the people who have like no skin in the game at all, and even the people that have a skin in the game, they might not all hop on board. But the moment it starts getting real, the moment people are, every movement just keeps taking time. It's like the avalanche. They all start with one small snowflake. The next thing you know, it's just erupt an entire town. So efforts like this today, even just hopping on the call with all of you all, and I would love both of your emails and to stay in touch, because we'll make things happen, we'll make change. Nothing ever happens overnight. And as you all know, however, I like what Ms. Lynn said, there is a tipping point. We are, in my opinion, reaching a time in the world where you might be, I'm not gonna say might, you have an opportunity to do something real dope. Sometimes it's not just about, in my opinion, it's not just about what you actually do. It's about timing. And right about now, you have the whole world just tipping, doesn't know where it wants to go, and it's this thing to where, you have moments to where, let's just look at it with Bitcoin itself. We just went from your son catching the double life for 40 years to it being made legal tender in a different country now.
Yeah.
That wasn't a discussion 8 years ago. Right. So we also have to look at, just how we continuously build these things. And I would love to, like I said, we'll stay in touch offline. No, we're running up on time here. And any one closing remarks? I know we have a minute left. Whatever you want to say, just say it, and I think we can call it in today.
Lynn, I think you should end with something about Ross.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Well, Ross really stands for a lot of people. Like I said, there's thousands, including Russell's father, who are doing crazy sentences and are suffering, and their families are suffering. Ross is a very compassionate and idealistic person. He's not what you'll read about online. Please don't believe the media about Ross. And I imagine that's true about Russell's father as well, because they love the sensationalism. Ross, and please go to freeross.org, sign the petition if you think the sentence is wrong. And all you have to know is double life plus 40 years for nonviolent charges, first time offender. Done. I mean, come on. It puts us all in danger, as I said. And there are thousands and thousands of people who are trapped in this situation through force and through injustice. And we need to stop it. That's all. It's not acceptable.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, we stand behind that. We stand behind Ross. And with that being said, we are complete for the day. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, that was great, guys. Really wonderful
you.
to meet you both.
Great
And
meeting you, Lynn. We'll be in contact.
okay.